My name's Mark, one of the pastors here at Trillium. I recently read a little booklet on digestion. Digestion's always something I've taken for granted, but as I've gotten older, I've become more conscious of how my eating practices and how food affects me. I remember my mom saying to me that I should chew my food 32 times. And interestingly enough, this book put a great emphasis on chewing one's food, how important it is to the total digestive practice. You need to chew your food 32 times. As a kid, I never did it. And as a young adult, I never did it either. It just seemed to take too much time. I'd rather wolf the food down and get on with things. Yet I noticed in England, in Britain, they have this Just Chew It program, and its emphasis is on chewing one's food thoroughly before swallowing. And it's based on this understanding that the vast majority of British subjects has some kind of digestive malady going on, and that it's affecting the population, and they're trying to teach the people again to chew their food thoroughly. And there's some interesting statistics I won't go through for you, but I can emphasize the broader conclusion that when you chew your food thoroughly, you have this more satisfied, more contented feeling inside. And you also get more nutrients out of the food you eat. There was an interesting little story about the fact that in World War II, the Japanese prisoner of wars, I should say Allied prisoners of wars in Japanese concentration camps, of 130 prisoners, only 2 survived because they chewed their food 150 times, and they got every last bit of nutrient out of the food. All the other prisoners of war died, but these 2 guys hung on because of that fact. So you get much more nutrients out of your food when you chew it thoroughly. You also avoid digestive upset. That chewing breaks down the food into small enough particles that you can actually properly digest the food. And you're not gulping air into your intestinal tract, and you're not getting the bloating and all the other kinds of problems that come from not chewing your food thoroughly. And finally, you get to enjoy your meal more thoroughly. It's a more relaxed, peaceful experience. And I've been practicing this for a little while now, chewing my food 32 times. And it is really a lot more relaxing and peaceful to eat this way. I wondered about how do we become so disconnected from a basic physical task in life? How is that we became so disconnected from such a simple practice? And what does that say about our mental state? How we're going about our mental lives? I mean, if we're wolfing down our food, are we wolfing down life itself? Are we moving so fast that we can't really be still for long enough to enjoy anything in life? We're wolfing down our lives. I remember recently driving along a road and someone just pulled out in front of me. They came up to the stop sign and they just pulled out in front of me as if I wasn't even there. I didn't really have to crack on the brakes much, but I was wondering, what was going on in their mind when they came up? And I wasn't really even upset because I've done that to people too. I was in the local Food Basics and a checkout counter came open, and I just rushed with my cart to get into that first place line because I wanted to get out of the store so quickly. Instant texting, rush shipping. I have a friend of mine who works for Perlator says this job's a lot harder now than it used to be because people's expectation around timely delivery has changed. So we're wolfing down our lives, and yet it's not the speed at which we do something, but the focus we bring that we know deeply in our hearts was what matters most. It's interesting, there was this woman named Miss Manners. She used to write a column. I think she still does, and I haven't seen it for a long time, and I used to read it because she talked about manners and etiquette, and I must say I really didn't like what her advice was to people. It seemed artificial, kind of feigned. But then in one of her articles, she talked about manners and etiquette and basic civility as slowing down the interaction between people. When you chew your food 32 times, you're just slowing down the whole eating process. And when we engage in etiquette and good manners, basic civility, we're slowing down the human experience with each other. And she thought that was so important to healthy living. And I got to realize that, when you show good manners, you really are slowing down life. It's bringing it to a pace I think it's much more healthy for us. I read an article by Ms. Manners, Judith Martin, and she was asked, what is the major etiquette breach that you most dislike today? And she said, the major etiquette problem in America nowadays is blatant greed. It's people who are scheming to get money and possessions from other people and who believe they are entitled to do so. Whether it is the gift registry or people who claim to be entertaining and are telling guests to bring food or bring drink or even sometimes pay, The ancient practices of exchanging presents and of giving hospitality are being undermined by this rampant greed. And I'm thinking to myself, greed is also part of that faster paced life, whether it's social greed or economic greed or political greed or a host of other kinds of greeds. It's trying to get something faster than one would normally be able to get it. It's I want it and I want it and I want it now. I want it now. Greed is part of wolfing down life. The greedy animal who's fearfully devouring the prey because they don't think they're going to get another catch. I think at the core of all these practices that we're engaged in today, whether it's fast eating or fast driving or not taking time to extend good courtesy to one another, is this panic inside of us. You know, when someone comes up to a stop sign and they're not willing to stop, is that not really a panic that's going on inside of them? As if they're going to have to wait for a few seconds to get out, and what's that going to mean for their day? When we looked at the story of Jesus in the gospel, this woman didn't have good health, and she so desperately wanted to get healed, so desperately. She'd been sick for such a long time. And finally she meets up with Jesus, and she has this great panic come over her, and she reaches out and grasps greedily his garment, hoping that she'll get healed. And there is a power that goes out from her. And amazingly, she's healed, and she comes before Jesus, and Jesus says to her, "Oh, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And I've always been struck by that, because it says in the scripture, there's this power that went out Jesus to this woman, yet the emphasis that Jesus brings to the story is not on the power of the Spirit that lives within him, but on the faith of the woman. And I'm thinking, is this just good etiquette, good manners on his part to put emphasis on the one who's healed rather than on the healer? But if etiquette and good manners is really about slowing life down, maybe he's trying to draw our attention to something. Maybe the crowd wants to rush off and make a big exclamation over the miracle. Maybe the woman does, but Jesus wants to draw attention in a slower way to the truth that the power to be healed lies within the woman's faith too. There's been a connection made at a much slower pace of life. See, the Spirit and God moves very slowly. The world rushes. The ego always speaks first. The Spirit lingers under the surface, speaks at a much slower speed. And our task in life is to slow ourselves down enough to take hold of life in the way it's meant to be taken hold of. To chew life one mouthful at a time. To allow the Spirit to speak through us, to extend love, one gracious act at a time. We have one of our bedrock beliefs, God's vision for us, peace. It comes in the slower movements of life. So I invite you to take time today to chew your food thoroughly, to chew your life thoroughly, to enjoy and savor every moment you have. I'm sure there's a way that you can get through your life without hurrying and yet get everything done that needs to be done. And in that peace, I say to you, go in peace.